Hey everybody, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 234, being recorded on January 16th, 2013. I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Allyn Malventano.
We are all back from CES. Well, three of us are. Jeremy never was at CES this year, but the rest of us are back home. It seems like everybody made it safe. Ken's the only one that got to go on a vacation after his. He went to San Diego immediately from Las Vegas. The rest of us had to go straight back to the real world. So, Josh, have you recovered? Are you all better now?
Was I bad there?
Yes.
Was I snoring terribly?
Well, yes.
Allyn only, spooned me once in bed.
Almost. I caught myself before it happened.
Oh.
Yeah, that was
Yes.
lucky
That's
all
the
of us.
creepiest feeling ever, is waking up with your arm
Everything
almost
Josh
around
feels.
Josh Waller
Oh, it's Joshua. He's big and fluffy.
with the bald head.
Yes.
It's like your dream, Alan. Okay. Let's talk about some stuff that happened. So obviously, not a whole. I say not a whole lot happened between the end of CES because when did we record our last one on Wednesday night? So it was actually exactly pretty much a week ago. We did our last podcast from CES. I apologize for not having a Tuesday night episode. Something happened.
We all went out, got liquored up, and drank and ate a lot of steak.
Oh yeah. It was the meat comas. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. So
Escargot. Even Ken tried the escargot. How'd you like the escargot, Ken?
no. Yeah.
Ah.
All right. Well, So I did write up a kind of a 2013 CES kind of summary wrap up article. Nothing. If you followed all of our CES coverage, which you can still check out at pcper.com/CES, if you want to get like a list of everything that we posted and all the videos we did and that kind of stuff, you can see it there. If you look at our wrap up and summary article, you'll see we kind of highlighted what I thought and what our team kind of thought were the big news items from the week. I would say the NVIDIA Tegra 4 and the NVIDIA Shield were the most polarizing from CES, I think is fair to say.
It was certainly the biggest news.
Yeah, it's funny because, I talked to somebody at NVIDIA. I kept trying to have NVIDIA tell me, like, okay, what is this thing that we're going to see? Like, give me a little bit of heads up so I can have some pretense about what to go in with. And they said, oh, no. It's going to be the biggest thing you'll see at CES, probably best of show type material. And I was like, well, that's kind of weird. That's not going to be a video card, right? And so they introduced a handheld gaming device based on Android and Tegra 4. So that was kind of interesting. And it went everywhere from a lot of people were really impressed by it. And then what was the headline? The initial headline from The Verge or Engadget was...
Revolutionizes.
No, it was 5 years in the making, 5 years too late.
Yeah.
And I was like, oof, that's like the exact opposite.
I guess that was Anshel Sag or Shag or whatever.
No, this was
his name.
Engadget or The Verge.
No, I'm telling you, he's the one who was,
revolutionized the console market. Yeah. Also, too far in the other direction, right? So we have like a 20-minute hands-on video where we got to play around with it and got to ask some questions and that kind of stuff. They're saying a Q2 release still, which will be interesting. Also, I thought was interesting was AMD's APU relevance and their kind of surprising release of information about what Kaveri, Kabini, and Tamash. These kinds of different... And Richland. These different APUs that seem like they may actually make sense in their segments, especially if you look at Kabini and Tamash, which apparently, according to AMD, came back from the fabs like way better than they expected them to be at the initial run, right? So that's pretty impressive stuff. I know we talked about that during our CES thing, but any other comments on that, Josh?
It probably didn't hurt that AMD has been producing 28 nanometer parts for about last year and a half, really, if you think about it.
Yeah.
They probably started producing their 7000 series graphics parts in September of 2011. So they know the process very well, and they applied that to Kabini. And they've gotten those parts back, and they're fantastic.
Fantastic.
Yeah, well, they're okay. But,
they're all right. We'll see. We'll see sooner rather than later. The other thing I thought was interesting, Intel's SoC power demonstration, where they compare Clover Trail to Tegra 3 to Crate on some different tablets, and and basically their statement is that their Clover Trail is just as power efficient as these other SoCs, and they had a pretty convincing demonstration to show that to be the case. And we're going to have some more discussions and demo times and instructional times on how to do some really detailed power measurements sometime this quarter with them as well. Allyn got to see Micron DDR4 DIMMs and a 1 terabyte SSD that they're hoping will be $600.
Hoping.
What was the potential release schedule for that? Did they have anything for that SSD?
They wouldn't give me a hard date. It sounded like early, they might not necessarily have the 1 terabyte capacity out right away, but they were talking that line, which I'm assuming is the 500 series. What was it, the 500? There was a letter before that.
I'm going to go with R.
Would be scaled from a 1 terabyte class drive. So that might, end up work out to 960 or something when you count over provisioning and whatnot. But 1 terabyte capacity drive for $600, and then I asked the question specifically, hey, okay, what about the smaller sizes, or is it going to scale? And they said, roughly, yes, it will. So 60 cents a gig, hopefully all the way down the line, or most of the way.
Groovy.
Yep.
There was a lot of discussion back and forth about the possibility of a Valve Steam box. Gabe Newell was there at CES doing interviews and that kind of stuff, and first big hubbub about the Steam box is confirmed, the specific device, and then it turns out, actually, no, they're just like an investor in this company, and there's going to be lots of different iterations and that kind of stuff. Interesting going back and forth. I still don't see a device that's this small being a really good gaming PC. I could see it being a good modest PC, like media PC type thing, but for gaming, the types of games that Steam sells, I don't know if I really see that being that great of a thing. Other big trends, big tablets.
Big tablets.
How about a 27-inch, 18-pound tablet, also a table PC?
Yo, dog, I hear you like tablets, so that doesn't make any sense.
No, I got a table for your
they're
tablet.
Massive,
something like that. The ASUS Transformer All-in-One that was actually kind of cool because it had Tegra 3 hardware in it and Core i5 hardware in it, and depending on what mode it was in, you could use that. And then we saw one from Sony at the Intel booth that actually they're sending our way for review as well. That's like a 20-inch tablet, so something like that. Giant tablets were a big thing. And then finally, the Nectar Mobile Power System Fuel Cell. This was a pretty cool device that we saw actually our first full day at CES, and this was a butane-powered charger for USB devices. Although, if you listen to the video, they talk about getting it into notebook computers relatively soon as well. So that's a summary of our highs, and we'll just say our highs from CES, our interesting things from CES, and let's move on. Maury, who was going to join us in the podcast, we ran out of window space here in our big shot, wrote up a review of the Corsair Hydro series coolers, compared the H60 to the H80i to the H100i. These are the newer updated models that have, I think they actually come from a different manufacturer now. They're Coolit rather than Acetec. And you know what? He does a lot of comparisons of these units. I will tell you that, let's see. I was going to look at the one graph here where we kind of see the cooler comparison. And here's what I found. So if you look at these tests, fan noise, the H60 is by far the quieter of the three units that he tested. H80 is actually louder than the H100. I think it's because it's a double stacked fan. Then if we look at the overclocked temperatures, here they are. At idle, they're all identical. But under a load, the H60 is about 4 degrees higher than the H100 and the H80i. I was a little surprised to see that the H100 and the H80i perform basically identically at his idle and his stock and his overclocked settings. And you can see here why. So the H80 is a double thick radiator, whereas the H100 is thinner but longer, right? So in effect, you probably have about the same radiator space. So the H80 and the H100, don't think of them as different performing devices. Think of them instead as just different form factor devices, depending on what kind of space you have in your chassis and that kind of stuff. If you look at cost, though, the H80 is looks like $89 on Newegg versus $105 for the H100. So you actually save a little bit of money if your case can fit the double wide cooler capability.
Hey, even that little Antec case that I tested my double wide on was more than adequate. So you know what? Just get the double wide.
Get the double wide, and in fact, that is the one. That is the one unit from Mori that got the PC Perspective Gold Award in terms of getting an award for the actual unit. So the H80i looks like the best option there. Another thing that just went up literally right before this podcast started is a follow-up, the second article in a series looking at frame rating, the idea of this new...
Frame rating.
So
Raping.
Replace the T with a P. No, the P with the T. Don't do it the other way around. And this is kind of our video graphics benchmarking testing method that we've been working on for a long time, looking to find stutter, looking to find graphics anomalies. And in this case, rather than looking at just still images, we look at videos. So we capture some video from Dirt 3, we capture some video from Dishonored, and show you where the stutters occur, kind of slow it down, show it normal speed, and then we kind of throw some detail at you in terms of how we can detect stutter, and maybe even what we can do with it once we detect. Hey, look, there's me, and look, I'm wearing the same shirt. That's a secret pro tip. Now you know what day it was recorded on. So if you look like later on here in the video file, you'll see we're actually using VDub, and we kind of walk through the video frame by frame, so you can actually see like in what frames maybe the same image appears multiple times in a row, so that you know, like, okay, something's not updating here, something's not refreshing as it's supposed to. And you can see I'm using terrific little whiteboarding techniques like that green highlighter to highlight where these tears and these visual anomalies occur on there, and as I explain it. So,
but if you're going to do real whiteboarding, you have to get the long girl hair and talk about UPS.
Yeah, those are good commercials. Yeah. But then I have to have Ken do all the animated, the CG whiteboarding. This was, by the way, it turns out it's really, really hard to draw a circle with a mouse. I don't know if you guys have tried to do this.
Just noticed this.
Well, I've never really tried to draw with a mouse before. I'm not an artistic person, obviously. And we were debating like hooking up touchscreen devices and that kind of thing to try to do the whiteboarding and the, what do we call it, the annotation on the screen and that kind of stuff, and we just kind of said, screw it. So instead, you'll see me draw a lot of semi-straight lines and stuff. What's that, Jeremy?
Suddenly you realize why stylus exists.
Yeah, we'll have to look into that in the future as we dive a little bit further into it. But definitely go to the website, check out that video. It's called Frame Rating Part 2, Finding and Defining Stutter. A lot less text in it. There's a lot more visual aid involved in this one, so definitely make sure you check out the video.
That's good, because we hate reading.
Yeah, and it's tough.
Hate reading.
It's tough for you, I know.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, check that out. And actually, what I want to make sure we're reiterating is it's a work in progress. We're kind of building up to a release of a whole lot of information. And if you have any thoughts or comments or ideas, leave them in on that story and the comments of that post. We would really appreciate it. So I know I haven't had a whole lot of time to read feedback from it, so I don't want to dive too much into it. Other than we showed Stutter in Dirt 3, slowed it down to 25% and give you an idea of where it is. Same thing in Dishonored, and then in Dishonored we kind of stepped through and walked by what you kind of see in slow motion, even on a frame-by-frame basis when that happens. And that should give you a clue as to what we'll be able to look for in our analysis tools, sometime down the line, hopefully this month, maybe next, to really kind of easily grab this amount of information and start to analyze and discuss Stutter more scientifically than we have in the past so far. So, any other thoughts on that, guys, before we move on to our special edition ad, and then we get into some news from the week?
No.
Special edition ad, huh?
It's special edition advertisement for 2013. We didn't get to run any ads really before the podcast at CES. So we've been building up for this one.
Sweet.
I'm so excited.
I know you guys are really stoked about this. So let's see what Alex from MSI has cooked up for us this time.
The all-new Z77 M-Power mainboard from MSI is poised to change the overclocking game. Every Z77 M-Power board will have a factory 24-hour military-class burn-in test completed before shipping. Additionally, performance-optimized features such as Go-To BIOS, Multi-BIOS 2, V-checkpoints, Bluetooth 3.0, and onboard Wi-Fi allow users convenience and total system control over their overclocking and gaming experience. This is the new endurance champion, Z77 M-Power from MSI.
Thank goodness we're on a new year.
So in 2118, when we're recording this podcast,
The Empower Z77.
Well, he will be proven right. Those Z77s will
We're all
still be running.
gray-haired and wrinkled, and
The funny thing is,
Alex still looks the same.
I talked with Alex today, and he was like, I think we need to record another podcast ad.
No,
Said Alex, I think you're right. He's like, okay, well, I'll make a trip out there.
Master
maybe
of
this
the
month.
obvious.
So
make sure he wears the same shirt.
have them
That's a good
record
call.
a medley of them or something.
I think that's going to be an idea. I think. Yeah, never mind.
need a rotation.
Yeah,
Damn it.
we'll do multiple of them for sure.
Maybe we could do bad lip readings, Alex. That would be even better.
That's a good idea. Josh, you watch the video in slow
My
motion.
ice
and write
cream
something.
is running all over the fat girl's bed.
I'd be for
Well,
it.
let's
if you
get some
come
of the
up with it.
viewers to record their own take on the commercial. We'll just play them.
I would totally do that. I would, yeah. If you guys want to do a bad lip sync reading of Alex's ad, we will play it on our podcast for sure. Oh no. Anyway, let's move on. By the way, thank you MSI for their support. I apologize for all the laughter afterwards. It's not the product. It's just the way I build it up.
As long as they remember your name.
But I tell yeah, exactly.
Ryan keeps getting our hopes up that we have a new ad.
One of
And
these
then-
days, I'm not even gonna. One of these days, when we get one, I'm not even gonna build it up. I'm just gonna play a new one, and you guys are gonna be totally shocked.
It's gonna be like, here's the same old MSI ad, and then it'll be like this brand new one with like fireworks going off and stuff.
See, the people in the chat room are calling it the greatest running gag that we've ever had on the show.
It possibly is.
Is the fact that we've had that same ad from Alex for so long. So I would feel sad. We'll have to, maybe this should be our pre-roll as we come into the podcast in the future. All right, let's talk about some news that happened over the last week. Let's start with one that just kind of went up today, but I thought was the biggest, most important one. NVIDIA employees stole 100,000 confidential documents, according to AMD. So this is an interesting story that's kind of just starting today. Apparently, AMD filed a complaint in the state of Massachusetts, that alleges that Robert Feldstein, Manu Desai, Nicholas Kosiak, collectively downloaded over 100,000 files onto external hard drives in the 6 months before leaving the company. All three and another manager, Richard Hagan, were accused of recruiting AMD employees after leaving for NVIDIA. So there's two things going on here. One is, obviously, the files that are been stolen are a big deal. And then apparently there was a no solicitation of employees agreement made before departure. I believe the first one to go was Feldstein, and he's definitely like the biggest name in this. He was the acting vice president of strategic development at AMD before he left for NVIDIA, and he is basically being called the one responsible for getting AMD GPUs inside the Wii U, the next Xbox, and the next PlayStation that are coming out this year. Obviously a very, very big deal, and so it was even a bigger deal in July. Well, maybe not, but it was a big deal also in July when NVIDIA grabbed him and took him over to their side, right? So it was, at the time, I think a lot of people thought, well, this is NVIDIA hoping to get into the next generation of consoles last second by taking the guy who's brokering these deals. I think that's pretty much that's over with, right? AMD is going to be in these next consoles. I think that's pretty safe to assume. And so Feldstein must be working on future things. Well, apparently one of the things he was working on was getting these documents and recruiting
And that's a full-time job.
other employees.
Can be.
And the part that maybe makes it worse is that if it turns out that they recruited specific employees because they still had access to these files, right? And that can maybe be a much bigger deal for NVIDIA. I don't know. Josh, do you have any thoughts on what this is? I have no idea. Somebody asked what could possibly be in these 100,000 documents that AMD thinks
probably
are gone.
technical details that those 4 employees did not know offhand, because you think of the amount of employees and engineers who go to different places and say, hey, this is the way that, this is the PLL that I designed. We did a few unique things in that. And,
Right.
I mean, all this stuff is in my head. It's part of my skill set. I can adjust things and apply it to your product without, unless I'm really dumb about it, without any kind of litigation. But it seems like that they were most likely getting stuff that was out of their range and area of expertise. And so instead of, getting 4 guys, you're getting the work out of, 20 or 30 all at once. And, maybe or maybe not you can apply these to your products. But I think the biggest thing is that even though it's going to be another 7 years before we see another console, a new any kind of new console wins, NVIDIA will be able to see what AMD did, how they were able to negotiate, how royalties worked out in those specific situations, because a lot of that stuff's locked down and it's not available for the public to see. And so they get insider information on negotiations, what AMD thought of the negotiations, things that they're willing to offer, things that they didn't end up offering, and how it all worked out in the end. And that's just information and it's strategy and stuff that they can use in the future to potentially get these large console wins maybe sometime.
I mean, we're talking 5 to 6 years.
Oh, it's going to be 7 years at least before we see another generation of consoles.
Right.
I mean, the Xbox 360 was released in 2005.
Sure.
Yeah. So,
I mean, I'm talking about 5 to 6 years before it's like there's a real competition for the product, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it just seems odd, there's got to be something in there that's important other than what these guys knew, as you said. And that's the part that's kind of interesting to me. And what's almost unfortunate for AMD is that if these 100,000 files were already in the hands of these NVIDIA employees, chances are the damages have already been done, right? People have read them, have looked over them, found the information they needed, and have put it in their own mental database if they haven't, put it into, product portfolios coming forward and that kind of stuff, if it happens to be true. And the really only way AMD, AMD's kind of, they put a restraining order on these guys so they are not allowed to delete stuff or remove emails or that kind of deal. And I'm sure that always works out splendidly for them. But it would have to come down to them suing NVIDIA for damages if they were to use the information from these documents, right? It's not that they could somehow, they're not going to be able to sue NVIDIA for necessarily having these employees on their payroll still.
correct.
Well, no, because there was no non-compete agreement ever signed, so they can't do that.
But there was a no solicitation. And, of course,
I'm
those
sure
guys
there
all
was.
thought solicitation means they go out and get prostitutes. No, I'm not going to do that.
Well, I mean, that's probably frowned upon as well.
Have you ever visited Silicon Valley?
I didn't say they didn't do it. I just said it was frowned upon. I mean,
Yes.
let's be realistic. And also, there's nothing else to do in San Jose. Ever. So that'll be something we'll be watching very closely, and we'll see if any more information out of these 100,000 documents tends to leak out. Maybe we could find some cool, interesting things that nobody wants us to know, AMD or NVIDIA for that matter. All right, Josh, you posted something here.
Nope, didn't post a thing. You pay me for nothing. My witty banter.
Well. Instead, you actually did post something. ST Ericsson, who I know solely as a crappy cell phone manufacturer, shows off first FD-SOI product. So tell me what that means.
Okay, we've all heard about SOI. AMD's been probably the biggest manufacturer of SOI-based products and probably the top buyer of SOI wafers. IBM is probably a close second. There are other guys that do some specialized parts, but it's not as widespread as what AMD and IBM were able to do. Well, AMD, when they sold off their foundries, they decided, hey, we're 32 nanometer SOI. We're going to go 28 nanometer bulk. Do some other things. We'll be fine in what we do. It's going to meet our criteria in terms of power and clock speeds. So we're moving away from SOI. Well, that SOI was the previous generation called partially depleted SOI. And the next generation of SOI parts is called fully depleted. Now, I can't really go into all the details of the differences between PD-SOI and FD-SOI. That's going to be for a later date when I can do a little bit more study and give you some actual diagrams of the differences and why it makes sense. But FD-SOI is the next generation of SOI technology, and ST Ericsson is the first to actually produce parts in any kind of quantity that are FD-SOI. Now, even AMD, I mean, they didn't give us an answer during our meetings if they were going to pursue FD-SOI at either 28 nanometer or below. We would expect potentially them to do that at 20 nanometer, but I'll go into that a little later. This is a part. It's the L8580, 8580. It's a Cortex A9-based ARM processor with the Imagination Technologies SGX 544 graphics portion. Now you think, hey, everybody's got these. In fact, everybody's going to A15. So what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that this processor runs in the same power range as most other handheld cell phones. But instead of running at 1.2 gigahertz to 1.5 gigahertz, it's running at 2.5 gigahertz. So it's a very, very fast running processor. It's very efficient. Now, when you compare it to, say, the Cortex A15, A15 has some IPC advantages over A9. And so if you've got a part running at 1.5 gigahertz, that's A15, it would essentially be running about as fast as a 2 gigahertz A9. Well, this product from ST Ericsson is running at 2.5 gigahertz. So even though it's dual core and it's got not the greatest 3D processor in there, it's still able to outperform the competition by a significant amount just because of the materials that they've used. So they've got the graphics portion running at 600 megahertz, which is a 20% increase above what is usually seen with 28 nanometer process technology with that particular graphics part. So when you put it all together, this is a product that runs very fast in both process CPU based applications as well as some 3D graphic stuff. But the other thing they showed off is that it could go down in speed. They cut down the speed in low power mode, and it was consuming 0.6 volts of power, which if you consider what our the AMD FX 8350 runs at like 1.4 volts. Some of the Brazos parts, they run at like 0.95 volts, and these are considered low voltage processors. Well, they have it even lower. I mean, FD-SOI brings some physical characteristics to not only just speed, but also power consumption that I would say is superior to what Intel is doing with 3D FinFETs on bulk technology. I mean, I could talk about this for hours. I've only got so much beer left. And plus, people probably are just tired of hearing me talk about materials and
Well, you haven't said the name of it yet.
Pardon?
You haven't said the name of the chip yet.
The Novathor. Yeah, Novathor's been around for a long time. But yeah, it's kind of silly, but it's ST Ericsson. And the one thing you think, hey, they've got this part, it's got these wonderful capabilities and properties. Why isn't everybody using them? Well, one, they're not quite out yet, and two, they just can't produce enough of them. I think I had read that back in May they started limited production, and it was 500. I think you maybe quote me on this, I don't know, but I need to look into it more. But it's about 500 wafer starts a month. And that's just not going to make very many processors, especially when you're dealing with, giant telecoms and people, building millions of handsets. It's just not going to be able to do that. And even though they've been ramping up, they just still can't produce enough of these parts to satisfy as many customers as they would want. So that's kind of the downside of what ST Ericsson has been doing. But, hopefully they can make enough to satisfy their needs, that they have a part that has not just outstanding performance, but also really, really, really good battery life. Far better than what Qualcomm can have with their 28-nanometer crates, or, Samsung with their 32-nanometer Exynos processors. It's going to be very interesting to see who adopts these, what kind of handsets that we're going to get, what quality of the handsets. Even though the chip may be great, the design around it might just be absolute crap. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see. I mean, when you read some of these numbers, Ryan, I mean, were you surprised by it? Did you think that, hey, that's interesting, but not that really effective? I mean, what are your impressions of this from what I have been talking about?
You've been talking?
No, I haven't been talking at all. That was my dog.
Oh, well.
It's barking.
You know a lot more about this stuff than I do. So the material changes I don't see necessarily as big a deal, because I don't tend to project what they'll mean in the long term. I tend to look at what they give us today. But if you're talking about 1.5 to 2.5 gigahertz, that's a pretty big jump, right? So that's got to be impressive, even if that's the only specific number I look at. And if they could do that in the same power utilization, or the same power consumption levels at least, that'll be good.
Yeah.
I don't know, but 500 wafers a month.
That's not going to make a lot of chips.
No. Even at 100% yield.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. But that was back in May. So obviously they've ramped up some, and if they're showing them off here and they're trying to get new customers,
that's true.
They feel that they can at least satisfy some demand.
All right, let's talk about another couple of things that CES follow-up, some stories that came from the show that didn't get posted until after our last podcast there. And that one of them was the prototype Intel TV system spotted at Imagination. Imagination Technologies being the Power VR creator. They have a lot of graphics technology and SoCs, including those from Intel. And just as we were being taken around their booth, we saw these pictures here of a set-top box infrastructure, right? So you can see in this screenshot what you're actually looking at is some interesting metrics, CPU utilization, memory utilization, frame rate, and that kind of stuff for we'll call it a next-generation video box type of deal, right? It was a pretty cool way to interact with TV, but then this is what was powering it. It was this unnamed Intel-branded box with network and HDMI out and that type of thing. Now, I have a general assumption of what's inside of here because it's at the Power VR booth, Imagination. It's not at like a Core i5. It's not an ULV part. It is probably an Atom based on Power VR graphics. So it was interesting to see that it was out and about there. And I Feel Smart, which is a great name for a company because every time you say it, you feel a little bit better about yourself. But yeah, that was interesting. And then also in the same booth, Caustic. I don't know if you guys remember them. This is the company that was doing ray tracing acceleration. They were talking about ray tracing hardware. They actually got bought by Imagination Technologies. And with the long-term intent of taking their technology into the high end, like bringing Power VR into maybe discrete graphics, odd, or bringing Caustic ray tracing down into SoCs and small chips, also kind of odd. But they had interesting demonstrations of it. This is what they were showing off mainly, though, last week, was the final ASIC versions of their cards, the Caustic, 2500, and the, what was the other one, 2100? So this card right here, you can see, has two of the RT2 chips, and it has a total of 16 gigs of memory. What's interesting about their ray tracing methodology, it doesn't require high bandwidth, so they can afford to put a lot of memory on there. This is actually DDR2 memory on there, as opposed to the the GDDR5 that you see on AMD's and NVIDIA's current Radeon and GeForce graphics cards and that kind of stuff. Also, only $1,495 for this, which sounds like a lot for consumers, but professional level stuff, actually relatively inexpensive. And they were demoing the Autodesk Maya software, kind of using that card as a real-time ray tracing viewport into a rendered image. It was actually really, really cool to see, and definitely the best implementation of ray tracing we have seen thus far. And they have, Caustic has recently acquired, we'll say, the person that, one of the people that was responsible for the NVIDIA iRay GPU ray tracing engine that NVIDIA built, now works at Imagination/Caustic as well. Kaplan, I think his name was. Really smart guy that we met there. So keep an eye out for that.
So not our old friend. Not our old friend?
No. He still works at Intel.
Good on him.
Yeah, he still works at Intel. They're still working on that. They've still got Knight's Ferry and all that other odd HPC stuff to go off on. Also,
the entire department's called It's Not Larrabee.
Right. It's not Larrabee. Stop talking about that. We also saw Intel Haswell HD graphics demoed. This is the Intel booth, kind of in the press meeting area. They showed Dirt 3 running side by side. One of them was on an unannounced Intel Haswell processor using the GT3 graphics core, the one that is supposed to have about double the performance of the current Ivy Bridge graphics. And they were comparing it to a laptop using NVIDIA's Kepler-based GT650M. Running at 1080p, high-quality presets, no AA, I don't think. But they actually ran really well. Now, they tried to do like a blind A/B test, like, pick which one is Intel. I bet you can't. And I immediately said, well, the one on the left looks like it's a little bit choppier. And they're like, the Intel Haswell's on the one on the left. And I was like, okay. It was only during like one section during the intro to the benchmark, but in the actual gameplay, they played very well. They both were very smooth. But keep in mind, where did I put that in this story? The GT650M is only a 384 CUDA core part using a 128-bit memory bus. So it's not exactly super high-end part. I think that's, is that GK108? I can't remember.
I can't remember either.
It's the smallest chip they make.
Code names.
It's the smallest chip of Kepler design. 384 cores compared to, the over 1,000 that you'll get in the desktop cards today. Obviously, it's not meant to compete with that. But, if you're NVIDIA, let's take a look at how many GT650Ms they sell in discrete solutions today for notebooks, and you can see why NVIDIA and AMD are going to be a little bit worried about the continuing improvement of integrated graphics on Intel's side. So,
did they tell you what the SDP of that system was?
No,
because that's definitely a scenario.
I asked about SDP, and they told me the same thing, basically nothing. They said, we're not ready to talk about it yet, so whatever. Jeremy, did you read up about this ASUS Mimo pad, which I still hate the name of? That it's actually VIA powered. I think we talked about it 3 months ago about the possibility of VIA powering an ASUS tablet, and they finally announced it.
Unfortunately, we didn't realize that they were going to name it this.
Well, yeah.
But then again, it's actually the guys that developed this are actually named Wonder Media Prism, so you can kind of see where they're going with this. But it's a 1 gigahertz ARM Cortex-A9, so nothing new or earth-shattering apart from the fact that it's an ASUS tablet, and it's got a Mali 400 GPU, which they're saying is going to handle 1080p video playback perfectly, which I can completely understand, and basic 3D, which I wonder exactly what they mean by basic, because I don't think you guys really saw it doing anything.
No.
Yeah. So, it's a single Cortex A9, so I can totally see that, using it as a tablet is going to be nice. I can see it managing 1080p playback, not a problem. It's got a gig of RAM in it, variety of storages, 8 or 16 it will come with. It thankfully does have a micro SD slot on it, so you're not going to be totally stuck with just using the ASUS web storage. It's a nice little mix, but you kind of wonder, is it going to be enough, especially as, if they're talking about 1080p display, you'd almost expect an HDMI out, wouldn't you? Not so much.
Yeah,
No.
I don't know. It seems like a long shot for this. We're talking about a $149 tablet, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
But are they trying to claim that that's a 1080p display on their tablet?
No, it's 1024 by 600.
Yeah, so where does this 1080p playback come from?
Oh, well, just that it can decode 1080p files and then shrink them to play on your screen.
Oh, okay. With
Yeah.
a lossy compression, I am
Right.
sure.
Well, yeah.
But for $149, you're looking at e-reader type pricing. It's running Android 4.1 Jelly Bean, so it's going to be, almost in a way, this is what the Kindle was supposed to be when they first launched it. People thought this Kindle was going to do everything, and well, hey, it did a bit more than your average e-reader, but honestly, that's basically what it was. This, you're going to have the Google Play Store, ebooks, social networking, and web browsing, which is probably going to be what it's used for the most, is streaming media. So, for $150, it's probably not going to be a bad investment for anyone that's looking for a tablet that isn't going to wow them and isn't going to be playing 3D games no matter what the advertisements say.
Until I get my hands on it, though, it's hard not to say just spend $50 more and get the Nexus 7 that uses the Tegra 3, has a better screen. It'll have obviously better performance and that kind of stuff. $50 more. So $50 more doesn't sound like a whole lot when you say it like that, but you're talking about a 33% increase in price over the $150 model. So
Yeah, you haven't seen my budget or my bank account, have you?
just spend $50 more, Josh.
I can't.
Just spend.
Just
and
send
then
$50 more
spend
dollars,
Have you
$100.
seen my wife's hair?
I don't know what to say to that. I don't know. So anyway, VIA continues to exist, makes ARM-based SoCs now, just like
Even if
NVIDIA.
your arena is gone.
Yeah, it is. Let's see what else happened. There's a jailbreak tool out for Windows RT. This is a post posted, written up there by Tim. So it allows you to run third-party desktop apps on your tablet, even if they don't come from the store. So apparently an XDA developer forum member known as Neatham45 released a tool that allows users to run unsigned desktop applications on Windows RT. The new jailbreak tool is a batch file that automates a hack discovered by another different hacker known as Cloak, or I don't know.
Cloaca?
Sure.
Why would a person name themselves after bird?
So apparently the
Parts.
hack is only temporary, needs to be redone after every computer restart. It does allow Windows RT to run unsigned code on the desktop. After downloading the batch file, you run you run it, follow the prompts. After it completes, users can run recompiled desktop apps like Putty, 7-Zip, VNC, DOSBox, Quake 2, and more.
Unreal Tournament 2004.
Can you run UT 2004 in Windows RT?
Probably.
That's awesome. While not a permanent solution, it is a step in the right direction. So finally, I can do something useful on my Microsoft Surface. I ad-libbed that part. That's not really in the story. How about Bioshock Infinite? Anybody excited about that?
40
I haven't even
gigs, you
finished
say?
Bioshock 1.
You never played Bioshock 1?
Well, I have. I'm like halfway through Bioshock 1.
It's really good.
I know it's good.
I never really played the second one.
I played all the way through it. I had a lot more fun on the first one.
Yeah, the first one was great.
The multiplayer in the second one was more interesting.
If you can make it all the way through the first one without having the story spoiled for you, Josh, which seems unlikely this far after the pact, it's really, really good story. So Bioshock Infinite's coming out. That's a thing. It will be out soon in March, actually.
We'll see.
And Tim wrote up this story, and it's basically there's an interview with Kevin Levine and Chris Klein of Irrational Games, the developers of of Bioshock Infinite. And they talk about the benefits of the PC version. Let's see, the PC version of Bioshock Infinite will be able to take full advantage of higher-end hardware and computers. It will come on 3 discs, as you said, 40 gigs of install. For high-res textures. It has additional objects and particles versus the consoles, longer viewing distance, higher quality textures, higher precision color buffer, DX11 features like contact hardening shadows, HD ambient occlusion, diffusion depth buffer, or diffusion depth of field, rather, compute shader, FXAA, that kind of stuff.
But no physics.
No, it's likely not to be an NVIDIA-sponsored title then.
Doesn't sound like it.
Would be my guess. And they had some interesting quotes in the interview, like console quality will basically be at the medium settings in the game, but there will be high, very high, and ultra above that inside the PC game. You know, the recommended system requirements aren't really that high, though, still. They're recommending like a GTX 560 or a Radeon 6950. 4 gigs of memory is all, and then any kind of quad-core processor, apparently. But it does say 30 gigs free of hard drive space. So get your Steam downloads prepared is interesting to say there. So March 26th, apparently, according to Tim. And
is the newest release date.
I think that's good. I think we're good now. I have inside knowledge for you, Jeremy. I'm confident in the March 26th. Wait, you don't believe me? You think I would just lie to you like that? I might, but I'm excited about it. I think it'll be cool. And also, you heard it here first, guys. We're going to do a game stream for it on release day.
Ooh.
We're going to do a game stream. So get ready for that. Is that all the news I have?
Are they going to bring the 3 DVDs for you to, install it on?
No, I bet I have to preload it the night before.
Lies.
Would be my guess. 40 gigs. Just give me an hour. I'll get it. I think that's it for news. Anybody? Did I miss anything? Alan, was there anything else in the world of storage that occurred other than taking
it all seems
apart
to have
cars?
happened during CES.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even then, there wasn't a whole,
Yeah. I think it sounds like with the hybrid drives and all that kind of stuff, there will be some interesting things coming down in the not too distant future, though, right?
Hopefully.
Yeah, Western Digital's got an interesting sounding one.
They do. They're not sampling yet. We'll see. It's from what I saw, though, it's not going to be the same as the Seagate drive in that Western Digital seemed to be talking OEM, like it was an OEM-ish kind of thing, meant for Ultrabooks.
Yeah, but we'll probably still get to test and review it at least.
Well, sure, but I won't be able to say right at the end of it, yes, you should buy this right away, because it's not going to be something you can just necessarily buy
but
and
you
drop
can say
in.
look for systems that have these, and that's all.
Sure.
what they're hoping that we will decide to do after testing the performance of it and stuff. So.
Right.
All right. Well, let's round up this episode. Get into our hardware software picks of the week, and I have an interesting one for everybody. Oop, let me change my window here. How about
show us how interesting? How interesting is it?
It's so interesting. It's a touchpad.
How long is it?
Booyah! It's this big. It's this big of a touchpad. So this is the Logitech rechargeable T650 touchpad, and to be honest with you, we saw a collection of these at the Synaptics booth when we were there during CES, and just kind of playing around.
You thought they were coasters, didn't you?
I thought they were
coasters. You put your drink on it.
I did. That's what I use it for now. Is that not what it's for? So I had been contemplating the idea of using a Magic trackpad on my PC for a while, and I decided that was dumb. So I decided instead to try one of these. And so I've been using this as like on my Lenovo X230, it has a very tiny trackpad, kind of annoying to use in some cases, and this is pretty good. It doesn't require a lot of space. You don't have to have like if you're on an airplane, you can set this down on your tray table, and you don't have to worry about the mouse running out of space on the table or something like that. And then I decided I'd bring it in here to the office, and I've been using it as my primary mouse surface for I don't know, 2-3 days so far, and I have to say I kind of like it. It's especially for browsing, it's pretty good. I used Photoshop a little bit with it, and it's not as good for that. The ability to click and drag is a little bit more problematic with the touchpad than it is with using a mouse. But being able to use the gestures of go back, go forward, scrolling is a lot more fluid on that kind of stuff than using a mouse wheel, at least in the mouse that I happen to have over here. They're not particularly cheap, $79. I think I got mine for like $69 on Amazon. But they do say it can, let's see, how long does it say it lasts? I don't know, it's like 2 months or something like that on a single charge, which kind of goes in line with the mouse mice that I've been using from Logitech as well. So if you have maybe a crappy trackpad on your laptop, could be a good investment, and you can use it on multiple different systems as well. I wish it had. I tell you what, I wish it had was a place to put the receiver that like the mice tend to have in their battery cover and that kind of stuff. That way, if I take this back and forth between a couple of different places, it works out. The mouse buttons are interesting as well. Like if you actually have to click as opposed to just tap, it's actually, you see the feet here on the bottom, they actually go in. So the whole trackpad goes down and the feet actually go in. So yeah, pretty nice little device that I got.
So is that what you were trying to draw circles on?
No, that would have been easier though. Maybe?
I'm just saying. Set a glass down on it. You might have a nice circle.
Could be. All right, Jeremy, what do you got for us?
I finally upgraded to Eyefinity, and I really gotta tell you, this is fun. There were two major hurdles that I had to accomplish. One was I didn't want to upgrade to TN monitors again. I wanted IPS, but I wanted IPS at $150, $160, which I've actually found with some ASUS monitors, which I've mentioned as a pick previously,
right,
and are absolutely brilliant. I do not doubt the 5 millisecond response time whatsoever. They do not interfere with me at all. The second problem, active Mini DisplayPorts. When they first hit the market, we can remember, they were only the powered ones, and they were well over $100. Since then, we've started seeing active single DVI connectors, which will, do 1080p or slightly better for the most part. They've dropped to about $25. Mm-hmm. This is no longer a hurdle. Yes, if you want to do 2560 by 1440 on a Cat Leap, you're still going to be spending about $100 for USB-powered dual DVI adapter. But for a single link, at $25, this is not bad. And I chose the Power Color one because that is the one I actually picked up. But you have a choice. There are quite a few of them ranging between $18 for, the almost no-name APC type versions to, some of the nicer ones like this. So instead of spending, $450 on monitors and another $200 plus on connectors, you're just topping it up. You can have Eyefinity for $400. It's going to make you want to buy a second graphics card or a new graphics card.
That's what they want.
On the other hand, it is just so much fun. Everything from, doing the podcast where I now have enough screen real estate to be able to have everything on screen at once.
So if we notice your head twisting from side to side,
there is a reason for that.
Recording now.
It is almost extending beyond my peripheral vision.
You look like a hairy Josh.
Yes. Oh, Rain Man, eh? But from first-person shooters to even Civ 4, it is just fun. If you haven't done it, at this point, it's no longer prohibitively expensive. I would consider it, and I would also heartily recommend grabbing an IPS monitor.
It's still kind of desk space prohibitive. I guess it's kind of the last hurdle you might have to get through for some people. But
only a year and a half after I did mine, and you have far greater budget for spending.
I had
it was
Eyefinity
Christmas,
before
man.
it was out, Josh.
Yeah, I know.
And yeah, Dale, it's 3
You're
monitors.
such a hipster.
I had Eyefinity before it was cool.
Yes.
Speaking of before it was cool, Josh, what's your pick?
You know what? AMD finally got the price of the FX 8350 down to near MSRP that they promised back in October. So for $199, you can get an FX 8350 if you really want it. If you've got good cooling.
I do.
If you like AMD and don't want to mess with Intel.
I wouldn't mess with them. Legally, at least.
Yeah, they'll bury you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway... So they're finally down in price, and if you're interested,
buy it.
Put your fingers in that pie.
Gross, but okay. Let's move on.
Okay,
Allyn, your pick. Hardware, software.
Software.
All right.
So a couple weeks ago, I did a huge road trip, and instead of using the whole Google Maps or the crazy cheesy iPhone, iOS Maps or whatever the heck it is. Decided to use that Waze thing. Any of you guys used it?
No.
You haven't used it? All right, so this is social networking-ish based maps. So anybody else that's using the Waze app on whatever they're using while they're driving logs into this network of all these people, right? And people can tag locations, and it's really, you just tap, like, the menus are really simple on the screen, and you hit like one button and it pulls up a little quick menu, and it's like there's an accident, there's police, there's this, that, the other thing, and you can tag what those things were on the route. So I drove 2,200 miles, and every single hidden police officer that was on the highway had already been tagged in this thing, and it warned me before I passed them.
Unless you didn't see them, and they weren't on the map?
True, possible, but, you know.
You saw more than you would have otherwise.
I knew where they all were, accidents.
My biggest concern...
I knew how far ahead an accident was. This is actually a perfect example.
Okay.
It warned me that there was an accident like 2 miles ahead, right? And then we come up over this crest in the highway, and lo and behold, there's this huge wall of traffic. Well, there was an exit ramp right there. And if you would be flying blind if you didn't know how far ahead the accident was, you might just consider waiting, right? We could have been stuck on the highway for like 3-4 hours when really we just sort of detoured and cut around and sort of, you know, went a couple of exits up on back roads and bypassed the whole thing. We knew exactly how far to go on the back roads.
My biggest concern is why the character on their website looks like Boo from Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. They have silly little cheesy icons, and the screen does weird things as you get close to your destination, and the roads turn into Pac-Man dots, and it starts eating the dots, and it does... I don't know.
Does
There's weird little
waka 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 waka.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it makes a sound.
Does it say, "Are we there yet"?
Are we there yet? I have to go to the bathroom.
So
Are we there
if you
yet?
can deal with the little cheesy, playful things that it does, it is extremely useful. Otherwise, like
So
really,
if you're driving
useful.
on a dark road and you run over something, you can sort of post up, was that a deer or a person? And it'll tell you
That
eventually.
was James Bond's girlfriend.
The people,
And you hit her.
the people behind you will tell you if it was a deer or a person. This is awful discussion. Let's move on. Okay, very cool. So that's going to round up this episode of the PC Perspective Podcast. Are you guys excited? Back in the groove of
It was
things?
short. It was short, but meaningful.
It was.
The MSI ad was superb.
I thought that was the best part of the whole show, to be honest with you.
The highlight.
Yeah. So good news is we'll be back next week. Same time. Join us live, if you will. PCPer.com/live is the URL where we stream this crap out on a weekly basis.
You're going to be back in Kentucky?
I will. I'll be back Tuesday morning. I'm leaving again Friday, but I'll be back again Tuesday morning. So yeah, I'll be back. We'll be here. We'll be ready to go. Maybe we'll have a new ad. Maybe it'll be the same ad. You won't know until you stop by and watch. Maybe we'll be giving stuff away. Maybe we won't. Who knows? We got to keep the mystery going. So thanks everybody for hanging out. PCPer.com/live, PCPer.com/podcast. If you want to subscribe to the show, we highly encourage that. Please encourage your friends and other tech enthusiasts in the community to subscribe. And YouTube.com/PCPer if you want to catch the video versions after the fact. You want to go back and listen or watch the last 20, 30 episodes on YouTube? That's your problem. You can do it. Nobody's going to stop you. Josh might try, but you won't be able to do anything about it.
No.
All right. We'll see you guys next
And
week.
Allyn actually ran over a donkey. And there's photographic evidence of it.
Damn you!
Ran over an ass, huh? All right.
Yeah.
Bye, guys. I'm Ryan Strout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Alan Malventano.
I must enunciate like this.